song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Hello and welcome to the Northwest African American Museum's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day virtual commemoration, presented by Boeing and supported by Public Health Seattle-King County and Squire Coca-Cola. I'm Lanisha DeBartoleben, President and CEO of your Northwest African American Museum. As we begin, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish people. We also honor the Coast Salish people of this region. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of a people who are still here, continuing to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. We are also grateful for our African ancestors who survived the Ma'afa, the Middle Passage, who endured the violence of slavery and the indignity of racial oppression, who had the courage to pack up and head north and west to the Northwest, who blazed trails for us to be here and to be ourselves here. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., born 93 years ago, was one of the most influential leaders of all time in world history. But he was at the same time a man of the people, a father, a husband, an uncle, a fraternity brother, a minister of the gospel of peace, a voice for the masses. His unwavering determination and commitment to social justice activism brought about a necessary change in this country, a lasting change. Dr. King once said, "Though we must face finite disappointments, we must never lose infinite hope. We do this by persevering even in the most turbulent, trying, and troubled times like these." But Dr. King was not alone in believing in infinite hope. His wife, Coretta Scott King, an activist in her own right, also believed. And so did those ancestors who came before them, as well as those everyday people who marched and prayed, voted and protested for an equitable America alongside the Kings. If they all could hope, let us do likewise. Dr. King's example of infinite hope is an anchor for us in times like these, allowing us to steady our focus on truth, justice, and agape love. And so in this new year that will unfold in ways we cannot yet see or know, let's be inspired to have an infinite amount of hope. Dr. King's life demonstrates what can be accomplished when we do just that. The Northwest African American Museum, with the generous support of lead sponsor Boeing, has prepared this program with you in mind to honor Dr. King, but also to inspire hope to live powerfully within each of us. Enjoy.
And one of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites, so that love is identified with a resignation of power and power with a denial of love. Now we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. Then the Greek language has another word called agape. Agape is more than romantic love. Agape is more than friendship. Agape is not something affectionate. Agape is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is the love of God operating in the human heart. And when one rises to love on this level, he loves men not because he likes them, but he loves every man because God loves him. He goes on with that. And so he rises to the level of hating the system rather than the individual who is caught up in that system. He loves the person and hates the evil deed. And I think this is what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. And I'm happy that he didn't say like your enemies, because it's pretty difficult to like some people. It's difficult to like people bombing your home and threatening your children and kicking you about. But Jesus says love them, and love is greater than like. Love is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. And somehow, more and more I've come to believe this. That this is the way that we will get out of this dark night of oppression and make of this nation a better nation. It means that we can stand up and allow the opposition to know that we will not accept injustice. We will stand up against it with our lives, but we will never stoop down to the level of violence and hatred. And we will come to that point when we will be able to convince him that a new world is emerging. And I tell you this evening that it will give us the right attitude. I know sometimes how discontent we get, and we have a right to get discontent, and how frustrated we get in the process sometimes. But I submit to you this evening that this way of nonviolence will help us not to seek to rise from a position of disadvantage to one of advantage, thus subverting justice. We will not substitute one tyranny for another, for black supremacy is as dangerous as white supremacy. This afternoon that God is not interested merely in the freedom of black men and brown men and yellow men. God is interested in the freedom of the whole human race and the creation of a society. I believe with this method and this approach, we will be able to win. And finally, as we struggle, we do not struggle alone. It's dark sometimes. It's difficult. Particularly for those who are struggling in the Deep South, facing all of the violence and all of the suffering. That is something that consoles us along the way. We are convinced that our cause is right. I return to Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, not in despair, not in bitterness. I return knowing that we are moving into a bright day of freedom. We, through our struggles, through our suffering, through our sacrifice, will be able to achieve the American dream. And this will be the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here tonight at the Northwest African American Museum. My name is Leroy Bell, and these are my only friends, Jason Cameron and Terry Morgan. And thanks for tuning in for King Day. It's a national celebration, and we hope you all enjoy the show. When I was young, I used to wish for many things. All the things that children wish for in their dreams. Every night before I laid me down to sleep, dream of all the things tomorrow would bring. Now I'm older and I have children of my own to protect. And everywhere I look, all I see is the hate and conflict. If I could have back all the wishes of my youth, I would wish for one thing only. I dream of peace. I dream of love. I dream that everyone will throw down their guns. I imagine there's a future where all of us live in a world of peace where people have more love to give. It's a place where hate can never, never survive. It's a place where war is always, it's always a crime. 'Cause I believe there's a goodness in each one of us. If we could find the language to help us to trust, then we could grow the seed for all that we need. We could find a better way. And I dream of peace. I dream of love. I dream that everyone will throw down their guns. Oh, I believe that we can make a difference this time. I believe that we can change the future one by one. I believe that we can try. When I was young, I used to wish for many things. All the things that children wish for in their dreams. Every night before I lay me down to sleep, I dream of all the things tomorrow will bring. And I dream of peace. I dream of love. I dream that everyone will throw down their guns. I dream of peace.
Hi, my name is Erin Howard, and I'm going to be reading a winter poem by Nikki Giovanni. Once a snowflake fell on my brow, and I loved it so much I kissed it, and it was happy, and called its cousins and brothers, and a web of snow engulfed me. Then I reached to love them all, and I squeezed them, and they became a spring rain, and I stood perfectly still and was a flower. Next, I'll be reading Love Is by Nikki Giovanni. Some people forget that love is tucking you in and kissing you. Good night. No matter how young or old you are, some people don't remember that love is listening and laughing and asking questions, no matter what your age. Few recognize that love is commitment, responsibility, no fun at all, unless love is you and me.
Thank you. Today's program is generously sponsored by Boeing. And here to bring greetings as well as to introduce our keynote speaker is Janine Collins, Vice President of Supply Chain Contracts and Sourcing. Ms. Collins, welcome, and over to you.
Good afternoon, and a big airplane-sized thank you to Lanisha DeBartolabin, the Board of Directors and leaders of the Northwest African American Museum for hosting this wonderful event. Boeing is delighted to be a founding and sustaining patron of NAMM. My name is Janine Collins, and I'm the Vice President for Supply Chain Contracts and Sourcing, Boeing Commercial Airplanes. Boeing is honored to be a sponsor of today's event and join with the NAMM community to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his legacy of inspiring infinite hope. Reflecting on the theme of today's event, the poetics of infinite hope, I am reminded of Nikki Giovanni's 1993 poem, But Since You Finally Asked. This poem demands that, and I quote, "We let no one turn us around, not then, not now, we plant our feet on higher ground," end quote. For me, these words paint the path forward. Despite the challenges of our COVID-19 environment and its disproportionate impact on racial and ethnic minorities, I am proud to be a part of an organization, the Boeing Company, that has also planted its feet on higher ground to be a part of the movement toward racial equity and empowerment. Boeing has seen much progress in our efforts to advance equity in our workforce, yet we also know there is much room to improve. At Boeing, we are committed to confronting inequity and creating a more inclusive environment for our teammates and future generations. Last summer, for the first time in company history, Boeing publicly released our Global Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Report, highlighting our diversity numbers and, more importantly, identifying areas where we need to do better. As a part of this commitment, we established a set of aspirations to achieve by 2025, which includes increasing the Black representation rate in our U.S. workforce by 20%. Boeing is also committed to supporting organizations and programs advancing racial equity in our communities. Over the past 2 years, Boeing has awarded more than $7 million in grants to Washington state nonprofits such as Odessa Brown Children's Clinics, Seattle Clemency Project, Compass Housing Alliance, and iUrban Teen. We are thrilled to partner with the Northwest African American Museum in this work and to support important community events like today's celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Nikki Giovanni. Nikki Giovanni is a world-renowned poet, writer, commentator, activist, and educator. The outspoken nature of her writing and speaking has brought the eyes of the world upon her. Always insisting on presenting the truth as she sees it, Nikki Giovanni has maintained a prominent place as a strong voice of the Black community. Her focus is on the individual, specifically the power one has to make a difference in oneself and the lives of others. Nikki Giovanni has written more than 24 books, including volumes of poetry, illustrated children's books, and 3 collections of essays. Her biography of legendary civil rights activist Rosa Parks won Caldecott honors and the Coretta Scott King Medal for Best Illustrated Book. 3 volumes of her poetry were winners of the NAACP Image Award. And her album, Truth Is On Its Way, was named Best Spoken Word Album by the National Association of Radio and Television Announcers. Since 1987, Nikki Giovanni has taught writing and literature at Virginia Tech, where she is a distinguished professor. She has received 21 honorary doctorates and a host of other awards, including Woman of the Year titles from 3 different magazines and the Governor's Award in the Arts from both Tennessee and Virginia. To paraphrase her 1983 poem, Charting the Night Winds, there is surely much to be done, and some change has rent. Nikki Giovanni has charted these night winds and invites us to glide with her. And now, the compelling, the dynamic Nikki Giovanni.
I'm Nikki Giovanni. Welcome to our program. This is a sacred poem. Blood has been shed to consecrate it. Wash your hands, remove your shoes, bow your head. I have a dream. That was a magical time. Hi-ho, silver, away. Oh, Cisco, oh, Pancho, here I come to save the day. I want the world to see what they did to my boy. No, 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 I'm not going to move. If we are wrong, then the Constitution of the United States is wrong. Montgomery, Birmingham, Selma, 4 little girls, constant threats, constant harassment, constant fear. SCLC, Ralph and Martin, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, Ed Sullivan. How long? Not long. But what, Mr. Thoreau said to Mr. Emerson, are you doing out? This is a letter from Birmingham City Jail. This is a eulogy for Albany. This is a water hose for Aniston. This is a thank you to Diane Nash. This is a flag for James Farmer. This is a how can I make it without you to Ella Baker. This is for the red clay of Georgia that yielded Black men of courage, Black men of vision, Black men of hopes, bent over cotton or sweet potatoes or pool tables and baseball diamonds, playing for a chance to live free and breathe easy and have enough money to take care of the folks they love. This is why we can't wait. That swirling Mississippi wind, the Alabama pine, that Tennessee dust defouling the clothes the women washed, those hot winds the lemonade couldn't cool, that let the women know we too must overcome. This is for Fannie Lou Hamer, Joanne Robinson, Septima Clark, Daisy Bates, all the women who said, baby, 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 I know you didn't mean to lose your job. I know you didn't mean to gamble the rent money. I know you didn't mean to hit me. I know the Lord is going to make a way. I know I'm leaning on the everlasting arms. How much pressure does the earth exert on carbon to make a diamond? How long does the soil push against the flesh, molding the moan that becomes a cry that bursts forth crystalline, unbreakable, priceless, incomparable Martin? I made my vow to the Lord that I never would turn back. How much pressure do the sins of the world press against the heart of a man who becomes the voice of his people? He should have had a tattoo, something like Freedom Now or something like that. Should have braided his hair, carried his pool cue in a mahogany case, wafted that wonderful laugh over a plate of skillet fried chicken, drop biscuits, dandelion greens on the side. This is a sacred poem. Open your arms, turn your palms up, feel the spirit of greatness, and be redeemed. We are today celebrating a great man, a great American, one of the few people who have made changes in the world, who have carried forth the word and the spirit of Jesus, who was a true Christian, who ended up sacrificing his life that others might be free. Martin was a great man, and we who followed him, we who followed him in the marches and in the spirit, have learned so much about how to change the world and what we need to do, what we can do. I have in this poem, it's called In the Spirit of Martin, which I love, but I have in this poem, and we forget, Martin played pool. He's a Morehouse man, but he played pool. And it would have been wonderful. I've never seen an illustration of Dr. King carrying his pool cue, but he should have had one. His family was, I wouldn't say rich, but certainly a very comfortable, middle class Black American family. He should have had a mahogany case to carry his pool cue. He shouldn't have had to walk in and borrow one. He should have, he had a great laugh. And we should, and I've seldom heard that, but we should have heard that laugh because he also liked to eat. And when we think about Martin, we have to think about food. He liked fried chicken. And when he was in Memphis facing his last day, actually, he said, you know, to the saxophone player, play pretty for me. And he laughed, expecting to go to a friend's home for skillet fried chicken. He loved biscuits, and he looked forward to the dessert. And he stood on the balcony and said, play it pretty for me. And the sound that he heard was the sound of a rifle, of a bullet. And that bullet took away, I was going to say, I almost said his life, but we are still talking about the life and the ideas of Martin. It took away his body. And Coretta Scott King, his wife, had to bury that body. But his life lives on, the spirit lives on. And more, the country and the world have recognized that we celebrate and praise what this man has given us. It becomes important for all of us to recognize that we all live in the present, but for the future. We live for our children, and now mostly our grandchildren. We are living now in space in a certain way because more and more we have rockets going outside of our gravity and going into the galaxy. And as we go into the galaxy, there are a couple of things that we must remember. And one is that it's illogical. It is totally illogical to think that there is no life in space. What we need to remember is that there is life on Earth. So if we start to respect life on Earth, if we start to recognize that there are no aliens, there are just different life forms. We need to respect the different life forms here on Earth. We should not follow leaders that make us hateful and afraid. We should not follow people that attack our government, because they are afraid that they are losing their power. And the people who are doing that actually have no power, as the people who were fighting Martin and who were beating the marchers, and who, if we roll it back even more, who were lynching Black men the same way that many, though not all, but many policemen are shooting innocent people in the back. And I was going to say, I almost said innocent men, but we have a couple of women who have been murdered by policemen, one in her home, in her bed, and one in jail because she was stopped for a ticket violation. And then she was found hanging in her jail cell. And it would be illogical and foolish and wrong to think that she committed suicide. We know that she was murdered. And it's time that those people be recognized for what they are, which is murderers and people who are afraid. It's an amazing thing that you can be afraid of somebody just because they are a different color. And your way of showing that fear, of trying to put that fear into them, is that you are going to whip them, you are going to buy and sell them, you are going to murder them. And one of the things that Martin did, we have Frederick Douglass, who was a great man, who used words also to show that we are not afraid. But by the time we get to Dr. King, he is addressing a different audience. He is addressing a Black audience, and he's saying to us, we who are Black Americans, we are not afraid. Because he's also going to say, I have a dream. And we know that the March on Washington, which was a great march, we had 100,000 people to come to Washington, and we had Dr. King to give a speech. And we try to remember that speech as I have a dream, but the speech actually begins with, we are here to cash a check. And he is saying to America, you made a promise. You made a promise of freedom, of liberty, of justice, and you wrote, in other words, a check. And we are here to cash it. It is time that you decided that this was a good promissory note and that this promissory note will meet its obligations. I live in the state of Virginia, where we call ourselves the peanut state. It's really funny because the Americans did not know peanuts until they brought African slaves over. They brought Africans over and made slaves of them. And they didn't know what the peanut was. But we know that the founding fathers were here organizing and creating a constitution, and that constitution is incredibly important because of its promise to go forward. And we need to remind the Supreme Court of that sometime, because we've got these people who should not be on the Supreme Court. One of them, Clarence Thomas, is dumb, of course, and Kavanaugh is also a sexual predator. Not to mention that last woman. To have them on the Supreme Court saying, we're going to push it back. Women should not have the right to control their own bodies. As they said, of we who are Black, you should not have the right to be free. As we are now saying to our brown brothers and sisters from South America, you cannot come to this country. This country was built, of course, on immigrants. It was built on immigrants from Europe. It was built on immigrants from Africa. It was built on immigrants from South and South Central America. It was built on people coming here in the belief that there would be a better life. One of my favorite movies, of course, is The Godfather, which opens with a man saying to Vito Corleone, I believe in America. And I always thought that was the strongest, and it's something that should be, it's one of the lines that should be remembered. But I always thought that was the strongest opening. I believe in America. He's from Italy. I came here to make my fortune and to have my children and to have them be free. And this is what has happened to me. We also have other people who believe in America and who came here not just to make a fortune or their fortune, but just to have enough food and enough water. There are people in the world who do not have water. And we can do a lot. We can do a lot without food. We can go a long way without food, but we can only go 4 days without water. And we know that Dr. King also went to India so that he could ask Gandhi, how did you make your march to the sea? What did you do with your people? And Mr. Gandhi said, what I did was to tell them that I love them, which he did, and that if they follow me, we will go to the sea and we will have water, and the water will have salt. It was the Salt March. And that was very important because when Dr. King came back to the United States, he said, well, we will go to the Capitol and we will have a freedom march. And a young man, after Dr. King was dead for almost 10 years, Louis Farrakhan, of another religion, Louis said, we need to have a march on Washington to have Black men have a day of atonement. Dr. Farrakhan did not exclude women, but it was for men. It was a Million Man March for a day of atonement because we all have something to atone for. We are looking for a way to have a future together. And Dr. King has to be given the credit for what he did. We know that, excuse me, we know that a young man named Emmett Till, who was from Mississippi, his family was from Mississippi. Emmett went to visit his granduncle, and we know that he was murdered. And we know that in that murder, they brought the Pullman Porters, some of the greatest men that we have, actually. But the Pullman Porters carried that body, got his body out of the river, put it in a box, and they snuck it. They had to sneak it, actually, on the train. They took it to Atlanta. And when it got to Atlanta, they changed trains, and it went to Chicago, where his mother and the funeral director and the preacher were waiting for it. They opened the casket so that his mother could see it. And the funeral director said, you should close this. You should not have this to be seen. But Mrs. Bradley, she was Mrs. Bradley, then Mamie Till Bradley, knew that she was not guilty, and she knew that her son was not guilty. So why would she try to hide it as if they had done something? And she said, no, I want the world to see what they did to my son. And that's going to create the second big movement. And of course, a woman then in Montgomery, a couple of months later, named Rosa Parks, is going to be on the bus. And she has paid a dime to get on the bus, as Black people, as everybody did. And she dropped her dime in. And like the Black Americans had to do, she had to walk around. She paid in the front, and then she had to walk around to the back. I'm sure I don't have to share with anybody how many times the bus driver pulled off. When they stepped out and went around the back, the bus driver pulled off because it was some kind of funny, I guess, to him. But he didn't pull off with Mrs. Parks that day. She got on the bus, and the section that was called the colored section was full. And she sat down because she sat in the next section. When the white section got full, a white man got on the bus, and he was standing there. The bus driver said, y'all give me those seats. And Mrs. Parks and the man sitting on the window and two men across the aisle. It was a long day, and maybe they were tired. That I don't know. They've never had their story. They've never written a book about it. There's been no documentary on those people, and they're all gone. But Mrs. Parks got up, and the man on the window got out and went to the back to stand up, and the other two went to the back to stand up because white people did not want to sit next to Black Americans, but they didn't want Black Americans to be sitting in their area. And Mrs. Parks, though, sat back down. And the bus driver said, I'm going to have you arrested. And she said in that calm and quiet way, you may do that. And Mrs. Parks was arrested, and a young minister from Atlanta was invited up. They started a movement. A woman said, let us, and it was a woman, let's stay off the buses. And everybody knew that they had heard this young man, he's a Morehouse man. They heard him speak, and they said, well, why don't we invite Dr. King? Why don't we invite him to come? And he came and he spoke. And that was the first time the world knew Dr. King. He was a young man then. He had a young wife, Coretta. And I must say, too, this is the 50th anniversary of the CSK, the Coretta Scott King Award. And that is a book award that was started by librarians so that young Black writers and younger Black readers would have a way of knowing these are the books that we think are wonderful. And CSK has grown because nobody thought that it would be around. Oh, I hate opinions, by the way. And nobody's going to care about an award that carries your name. But the librarian said, yes, young Black kids need awards, and they need to know who won awards, and they need to know the books. But more, which we frequently forget, young white kids need to read these books. They need to know something about us. When the boycott lasted a little over a year, but the buses were segregated. And now we know that Dr. King is going to be called upon to help lead and help organize any number of things. And one of them is going to be the most important, of course, is voting. And John Lewis from Fisk University, Diane Nash from Fisk, Reverend James Bevel from Baptist Theological, all went to join Dr. King at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and they went to cross that bridge. And as you know, the first time they were beaten, John was badly beaten, and a riot, as it were. The people wouldn't take it, so everybody was like, "Oh no, this just can't be." And Dr. King said, "We will do that." He reorganized, and a young white woman from Detroit, Michigan, named Viola Luiso, and we forget about Mrs. Luiso, decided, and she said to her husband and probably her children, I need to go. I need to be a part of this. She could have stayed at home, but she took their car and drove down to Alabama. And as the marchers, when we're going to have a successful march, as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge to go on and be able to march, she started to help people drive back over. And a Klansman, probably two, drove up next to her car, and they could see she was a white woman. I get so sick of them saying, well, we're protecting white women. And then why are you shooting them in the head? Pulled a gun and shot her in the head, knowing that she's going to die. They intended to kill her, and they did. But I mention her because we recognize that many people, Black people, followed Dr. King. We know that Cheney, Swerner, and Goodman, because Mr. Cheney was Black, but Swerner and Goodman, Swerner was a Jewish gentleman, and Goodman was, for whatever that would mean, a Protestant. But all three of those young men were murdered and their bodies thrown under a dam. A lot of blood has been shed so that we could get to a Voting Rights Act. And we could get to the fact that they said all men are created equal. They meant everybody. They meant all women too, are created equal. So we have now a Voting Rights Act. And it's important, as we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, it's important that we register to vote. It's important because when you register to vote, you also, of course, are available to be on the jury. And it's so disgusting to watch people shoot innocent people in the back. But for that matter, honestly, guilty people, you don't shoot people in the back. And we've had too many policemen shoot people in the back. And the jury has allowed them to walk away with, oh, I was afraid I was going to be hurt. Well, then you shouldn't be a policeman. But the jury system that we have has allowed them, 12 people have allowed them to walk away. And we're just beginning to change that. It's very important that you register to vote because that's how we pull juries together. And you might say, well, I don't have anybody to vote for. I don't like any of those people. Then you need to go and write in whatever name you want, write your own name in. But you need to register and you need to vote. And if you don't want to vote for what is available, write in what you do need to. And Dr. King, again, was very, very big on vote. Make sure that your voice is heard. And he raised his voice. And of course, he went to Memphis for the garbage strike, for the little people, not just always. He met a lot of important people. He met a lot of popes, a lot of presidents. He met a lot of important people. But one of the reasons that he was the main reason he was in Memphis, Tennessee, was to help the garbage workers, was to help the little men and women that nobody had paid any attention to. And to be there the first time they had a march, of course, there was a breakout. Some of the white people came over, some of the white guys trying to do things to frighten Black people, and Black people fought back. And of course, Dr. King received a lot of criticism, saying that it's your fault for bringing these people in. And Dr. King was a believer in nonviolence. And of course, it really, the people that needed to know about nonviolence were the people who were causing the violence. And we've seen that. We saw that on January the 6th, 2020. But Dr. King was a believer. He went back home. He went back to Atlanta. And he said to his wife, and this is history that we have, I need to go back and lead a march. And the great line that he said in the church that night was, I may not get there with you, because he was aware that his life was at stake. He was aware that the FBI, among others, the Klan, among others, some right-wing groups that we don't even know their names, were all trying to kill him. And he said at the church, I may not get there with you, but we as a people will overcome. We will be free. And we know that the next night, he's standing on the deck, getting ready to go to dinner, and he was shot and he was killed. He knew that, as Socrates knew it, as Jesus knew it, as any number of great people who have spoken up for other people knew it. Dr. King joins a line of great people. And you and I are just ordinary people trying to do ordinary things. We must vote. We must be, if we can, kind to other people. We must try our best to be good neighbors. But mostly what we want to do is help make everybody in this world a little better. And to follow Dr. King's example, we must raise our voices, and we must remind people that we too have dreams. Thank you.
We shall overcome.
Greetings of infinite hope on this Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I love the chosen theme for this year's celebration, Poetics of Infinite Hope. We speak of the importance of flor y canto, flowers and song, as core to generating our strength for the lifelong fight against the triple threats of racism and militarism, which shows up in our neighborhoods and cities across the nation as disproportionate suffering for lack of housing, untreated mental health and behavioral health, more lives lost and families forever marked because of COVID and gun violence. My family and my neighbors have not been spared, and it is easy to succumb to rage and grief. But flor y canto are easy to be found in our most diverse district, the 37th, the heart of King County, named in honor of Dr. King. The values of the 37th echo Dr. King's vision of equity, inclusion, and justice for all. Flor y Canto is found in the multiracial coalition and organizing that honors our elders and centers our young people's dreams and leadership to demand that another world is possible. And our claim to our own humanity, our health, and our well-being is revolutionary. I close with a poem from Rita Dove. The Meter's Prayer to Hades. This alone is what I wish for you, knowledge. To understand each desire and its edge. To know we are responsible for the lives we change. No faith comes without cost. No one believes without dying. Now, for the first time, I see clearly the trail you planted, what ground open to waste, though you dreamed a wealth of flowers. There are no curses, only mirrors held up to the souls of gods and mortals. And so I give up this fate too. Believe in yourself. Go ahead. See where it gets you. I wish you a happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
These days, it's hard to believe that the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice. Brick by brick, the foundations of a functioning society are falling apart. Our healthcare system, the climate, our economy, even democracy itself, all feel like they're on the brink of collapse. And our communities usually feel more pain than any other from these crises. But during these dark times, it's important that we see the light. As Dr. King said, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. This means that in the short term, we may continue to see a relentless virus, poisonous political divisions, a struggling economy, but we can't let that discourage us from our long-term vision of justice. If we keep working together, fighting against systems of oppression, and maintaining hope, our children and our children's children will see better days. All around King County, we see people that should give us infinite hope. The nurses, doctors, and healthcare staff who are putting their lives on the line to take care of patients during the scariest times our hospitals have ever seen. The bus drivers who suit up and drive us where we need to go, whether it's during a deadly heat wave or an unprecedented snowstorm. The high school students who are organizing mutual aid drives to take care of unhoused people, or organizing rallies to show that Black Lives Matter or to stop Asian hate. The teachers who are enduring unbelievable stress to make sure that our kids keep learning. These are our everyday heroes who we can see hope from. I say this not to suggest that the times ahead will be rainbows and sunshine, but to honor the work of those who are doing so much to keep us going. They deserve better. We all deserve better. And if we keep organizing and demanding more from our leaders and these failing systems, I believe we can use this moment to chart a better path. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. After all, we are Martin Luther King County. Thank you so much, everybody.
Uh-huh. saying lullabies. And I can hear babies cry. Mama's hands getting tired. No progress over here, no. Set us back 100 years. No dreamers anymore. Democracy is out the door. God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. America. Wake me up when it's done. When they block out the sun. When they whisper the story. How the West was won in the blink of an eye. And the mountain of lies, we were sold down the river. Your land and mine, disillusion, mass confusion, Constitution, they're trying to burn it down. Are we living or being driven like sheep to slaughter? I really wanna know. God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. America, yeah. God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. America, America. Cry. Mama's hand getting tired. No progress over here. Set us back 100 years. No dreamers anymore. Democracy is on the door. God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. America. Yeah, God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. America, America. God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. America. God only knows how I miss those days. She only knows how I miss the way we were. Yeah, America. America.
Hello, welcome and greetings from the Northwest African American Museum, located here in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. County, the only county in the United States whose namesake is Dr. King. My name is Anita Whitfield. I am the daughter of Alma Louise Massey. My grandparents escaped the horror of the South and ended up here in Seattle, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest, many, many decades ago. I'm honored to be a servant of the people in many ways, including in the role of Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer for Dr. Martin Luther King County Government, and I am honored to be here with you all today. My greeting to you today is simple. It is that although we have had and will continue to have disappointments along this journey to the beloved community, a community where each life, including each Black life, not only matters, but is truly valued, if we realize that true power is in the servanthood, serving justice and serving one another, we will never, ever lose infinite hope. Welcome, greetings, and thank you.
My name is Eddie Wright Jr., and I've been active since Seattle for a number of decades. One of the most cherished moments I have is being able to shake Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s hand in 1961 when he went to Garfield High School. I got that privilege because of the fact my pastor was Reverend Dr. Samuel Berry McKinney, who had been a classmate of Dr. King's at Morehouse College. And I was one of the first people, in the first batch of folks that Reverend McKinney baptized in 1958. I've studied civil rights. I had an opportunity to go down south. I don't know if it was an opportunity, but I was in the National Guard in the medics, and we had to go down south to medic training, and it was during segregation. I studied closely what the college students were doing by having the sit-ins and boycotts, and also followed the other organizations like the Southern Christian Leadership Council, which was led at that time by Martin Luther King Jr. In 1980, I was hosting a radio program on KYAC, which was a Black-owned radio station on 3rd Avenue, downtown Seattle. And Sunday afternoon, the late Freddie Mae Gaucher brought Reverend Jesse Jackson in for an interview. And he started talking about an event that Stevie Wonder was going to be having January 15th, 1981, to compel Congress to make Dr. King's birthday a national holiday. Reverend Jackson had indicated that since we were so far away, we might do like other cities and counties across the country, and that's to have something named for Dr. King to memorialize his name and also his philosophy. So we did a little study, collected signatures. We had on-air personalities that promoted the signature campaign to the city of Seattle to change the name of Empire Way to Martin Luther King Jr. Way. After about 7 or 8 months, we finally got a hearing with the city of Seattle, and their Board of Public Works came back with 3 proposals. One was to change the name of Martin Luther King from Madison to Denny. The second proposal was to change it from Denny to Yester, and the third proposal was to change it from Yester to Rainier. And that happened because some of the merchants at the south end of the street were vehemently opposed to Dr. King. They said it was too costly, but we think it was some other reasons as well. But the late City Councilman Sam Smith and George Benson, the Councilman Benson was a chair of the Transportation Committee and had a guy by the name of Bob Morgan working for him. And they wanted us to do everything but not have the name of that street. So eventually we were able to get the name change done. Mayor Charles Royer signed it into law. That was in August of '82. September of '82, the merchants at the south end of the street filed a lawsuit, which prompted us to protest their actions. You're saying it costs too much money to change the name of the street, but yet you got enough money to go to court. Anyway, it held things up for about a year. The Mayor Royer refused to put the signs up because of the court situation. And what happened is that November 2nd, 1983, Ronald Reagan signed the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday bill, which would take effect the third Monday in 1986. And shortly thereafter, the King County Councilman Ron Sims and Bruce Olson, a Democrat and Republican, by proclamation changed the name of the county. That was in 1986. In 1989, but I want to get over the thing, after Ronald Reagan signed the holiday bill on November 2nd, 83, 4 weeks later, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled the city of Seattle had the authority to change the name of Empire Way to Martin Luther King Jr. Way. So so the other thing is that in this whole struggle, January 1983, we had the first Martin Luther King March in the city of Seattle, protesting the city not putting up the King signs and demanding that Congress make Dr. King's birthday a national holiday. That's what prompted the first Martin Luther King March. And that march was led by the late Councilmember Sam Smith and other folks from our community who were held in high esteem. The other thing that happened is that after the name change went through, and it took us. We had to have the state to get involved. We had a lot of other local elected officials to get involved, and then 13 years later, in 1999, at this annual Martin Luther King event, I raised the question about it's been 13 years since Councilmember Sims and Olson changed the name of this county by proclamation. We charge Chairman Larry Gossett to promulgate legislation to officially change the name of King County to Martin Luther King Jr. County, instead of being named for William Rufus Devaney King, who was a vice president and also a slave owner. But as it turns out, the county did not have the authority to change the name. It had to be the state legislature. So State Senator Adam Klein from the 37th Legislative District introduced legislation 9 times, and it finally passed in 2005. And Governor Christine Gregoire actually came up to the King County, Martin Luther King Jr. Courthouse and signed the legislation into law. Then it took us another 17 months to get the logo, because the logo was an image of Martin Luther King Jr. And we had one particular councilwoman saying, we need to have a picture of the King County Courthouse. That should be the official logo. And I said, ma'am, the county courthouse does not look like Martin Luther King Jr. So anyway, after 17 months, we finally got Dr. King's image as the official logo for King County. It's on the flag, all the letterhead, all official county documents. Then most recently, through the Northwest African American Museum, their coordination of observing the 60th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s only visit to Seattle, that brought his son, Martin Luther King III, out for that event. And that was the last event that happened, although we look forward to doing something on Dr. King's birthday every year. And this year will not be any exception. And we're so happy that the Northwest African American Museum is partnering with the Seattle Martin Luther King Jr. Organizing Coalition to expand the day and involve more people. So I would encourage all of you on the 17th, that's watching this, to do something. You might not be it on the 17th, but do something nice for someone in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. So this has been Eddie Bry Jr. Hope you enjoy watching this, and if I can be of any service or clarify any of my comments, please feel free to get in touch with me.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory. Oh,
Thank you to the internationally acclaimed poet, Nikki Giovanni. Wow, that was powerful, beautiful, and inspiring. We salute the prolific and profound educator, best-selling author, Nikki Giovanni, for being with us today and for delivering a message, a reminder, and a challenge that we all receive. We are ready to move forward with a renewed commitment that dear Sister Nikki Giovanni so poetically outlined today. As we conclude today's program, we thank our lead sponsor, Boeing, supporting sponsor, Public Health Seattle-King County, as well as Swire Coca-Cola. All other sponsors, our many partners, program participants, and our community leaders that are reading civil rights children's books as a part of today's virtual program. We thank Everett Fitzhugh of the Seattle Kraken, State Representative Jamila Taylor, Director and Teaching Artist Isaiah Anderson Jr., Renton School District Superintendent Dr. Damian Pattenow, and clergyman Reverend Antimo D. Bennett Sr. They each carry the spirit of Dr. King, and we thank them for reading the children's books today. We thank NAM's phenomenal staff, board of directors, volunteers, members, and supporters, and we thank the phenomenal production team of today. Our aim here at the Northwest African American Museum is to use heritage to cultivate healing and hope. We hope that you follow NAM on social media. Join us as a supporter, as a volunteer, as a member, as we advance justice and equity, cultivate educational empowerment, and center and celebrate Black history, art, and culture. The Northwest African American Museum uplifts Black lives, Black brilliance, and Black wellness at all times, even in the midst of this gruesome pandemic. We believe in changing the world through anti-racist education, cultural heritage, inclusive history, and the power of the arts. Most of all, on this day and always, we believe in Dr. King's commitment to infinite hope. Thank you.
Trusting that you will make all Hi, I'm Everett Fitzhugh, and today I will be reading Let the Children March. 1963, Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. One warm spring night, my family went to church. We weren't there to have regular services. We were there to hear Dr. King speak. We were there to plan. He wanted to raise an army of peaceful protesters to fight for freedom. His brown eyes flashing fire and love, Dr. King told us the time had come to march. If I march, Mama said, I'll lose my job, sure enough. I can't march, Daddy said. I got a family to feed. The weight of the world rested on our parents' shoulders, but this burden, this time, did not have to be theirs to bear. I don't have a boss to fear, my brother said, or a job to lose. We can march this time. We'll be Dr. King's army, I said. I'll be fine, Daddy, I promised. Don't worry, Mama. Dr. King didn't like children being put in harm's way. He was a daddy too, after all. But he said that though we were young, we were not too young to want our freedom. Let the children march. They will lead the way. On May 2nd, a sunny Thursday, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, we all met at the church dressed in our best, feet ready. In a silence so loud that all I could hear was my racing heart, we began to walk. Hand in hand, we marched, so frightened, yet certain of what was right for freedom. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm gonna walk on. Would I be hurt? Would I be heard? Would it all be worth it in the end? I wanted to run from the angry faces in the crowd, run from danger, run from fear. Boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, on and on we marched. We marched. We marched. Hate dogged my heels all that day, its yellowed canine teeth sharp, but courage walked by my side and kept me going. Disperse or you'll be jailed, the police shouted the first day. Disperse or you'll get wet, the police shouted the second day. Disperse or we'll release the dogs, the police shouted the third day. We did not disperse. We kept on marching. We wouldn't stop until things started to change. Hundreds of us went to jail that first day, and even more on the second. My turn wasn't until the third day. After I was sprayed by water stronger than anything I've ever felt, rough hands pushed me forward and I fell to my knees in the police wagon. I was going to jail. Dr. King reassured our parents, "Don't worry about your children," he said. "They're going to be all right. Don't hold them back if they want to go to jail, for they are doing a job not only for themselves, but for all of America and for all of mankind." That night, crowded into a cell too small for even half the kids, we sang, "We shall overcome, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, and freedom is coming." Our parents couldn't be there with us, but still we sang, wrapped in the proud and loving arms of our ancestors. I was still in jail, but we heard that the next day and the next, more kids marched. The water hoses they used to sting us could not stop our fierce tide. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm gonna walk on. Turn the other cheek, we had been taught. Show love where there is hate. The world watched as hate bruised us, but for 7 days we walked only in love. The jails swelled to bursting, and even President Kennedy took notice. Daddy said the president received letters and calls about us from all over the world. Our march would become a memory, a small part of a larger story. But we had been heard, and the seeds of revolution were sown. Two days and nights I stayed in the jail. Some stayed even longer. When I left, I was tired and sore. My best dress was ripped, but my smile was as wide as the Mississippi River. I had made a difference. I'm so proud of you, baby girl, Mama said. Your march was what made them see. With nothing more than our feet, voices, and courage, we had done what others could not. Change was right around the corner. We felt it like a cool breeze in an Alabama August. On May 10th, the great news rang out. Dr. King had reached an agreement with the white leaders of the city. Desegregation would begin. One month later, I was playing on a playground I'd never been allowed to play on before. 2 months later, my family ate at a diner we'd never been allowed to eat in before. Our march made the difference. We children led the way. Singing the songs of freedom, 1,000 strong we came. You just heard Let the Children March, a book that tells you no matter how small you are, your voice will make the biggest difference.
Hi, my name is Antimo Bennett, and I'll be reading Counting on Catherine, How Katherine Johnson Saved Apollo 13. Catherine loved to count. She counted the steps to the road, the steps to the church, the number of dishes and spoons she washed in the bright white sink. The only thing she didn't count were the stars in the sky. Only a fool, she thought, would try that. Even so, the stars sparked her imagination. What was out there? Catherine yearned to know as much as she could about numbers, about the universe, about everything. Catherine's boundless curiosity turned her into a star student. She was so bright, she skipped 3 whole grades. She catapulted right past her brother. He wasn't too happy about that. By the time she turned 10, Catherine was ready for high school. But back then, America was legally segregated by race. Her town's high school didn't admit black students of any age. Catherine burned with fury. She wanted, more than anything, to keep learning. There was still so much to know. Count on me, Catherine's father told her. By working night and day, he earned enough money to move the family to a town with a black high school. Catherine loved high school. She was good at every subject, but math was still her favorite. She dreamed of becoming a research mathematician, making discoveries about the number patterns that are the foundations of our universe. In those days, though, there were no jobs as research mathematicians for women. Professions most available to them were teaching and nursing. So Catherine became an elementary school teacher. She liked her job, and she loved her students, but she never stopped dreaming about exploring numbers. In the 1950s, the U.S. government's National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, NACA, hired thousands of new employees. It even started hiring black women as mathematicians. Catherine heard about the mathematician jobs. Her heart raced with excitement. Perhaps her dream could come true after all. But when she applied for one of the positions, she was told they were already filled. Catherine had to wait a whole year until new spots opened up. Her patience paid off. She got the job. A few years later, the Soviet Union sent a rocket ship into space, launching a space race with the United States. NACA was rolled into a new space agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. Catherine now found herself at the heart of America's space program. She worked as a computer. Electronic computers were not widely used yet, calculating long series of numbers. All the computers were women. They were given the tasks that men thought were boring and unimportant. That didn't bother Catherine. She knew that without her contributions, a spaceship couldn't reach its destination nor safely return to Earth. Here's why. Sending a rocket ship into space is like throwing a ball into the air. At first, the force of the throw sends the ball up, up, up. But as its energy runs out, the ball's path curves back toward the ground. Where it lands depends on what angle it was thrown and how high and how fast it flew. Because math is a kind of language, Catherine could ask those questions. How high would the rocket ship go and how fast would it travel? Using numbers. And numbers would provide the all-important answer. Where would it land? To find out, Catherine plotted the numbers she'd calculated on a graph. When she joined the points together, they formed a curved line. At one end of that line was Earth at the time the rocket ship launched. At the other was where Earth would be when the ship landed. Catherine's reputation for accuracy and strong leadership skills, she was known for asking plenty of questions, got her promoted to Project Mercury, a new program designed to send the first American astronauts into space. Mercury's missions were going to be dangerous. So dangerous that even the Project Star astronaut, John Glenn, refused to fly unless Catherine okayed the numbers. "You can count on me," she said. Glenn's spacecraft, Friendship 7, orbited Earth 3 times and returned home safely. Glenn became a national hero. Catherine was promoted again. Now she was asked to calculate the flight paths for Project Apollo, the first flights to the moon. "Count on me," she said. On July 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts walked on the moon. Their feat was celebrated around the world. More triumphs followed. Apollo 12 rocketed to the moon in November 1969. Apollo 13 launched on April 11th, 1970. But on the third day of Apollo 13's flight, the worst thing happened: an explosion in space. Could the crippled spaceship make it to the moon? And if it didn't, would it be able to get back home to Earth? The 3 astronauts on board were in grave peril. Commander Jim Lovell told Mission Control, "Houston, we've had a problem." Back on Earth, Katherine Johnson got a phone call. Her flight path calculations would have to be done all over again, and perfectly. It would be the toughest challenge of her life. Catherine told Mission Control, "You can count on me." She rolled up her sleeves, took a deep breath, and began doing the math. She worked hard and fast. A few hours later, Catherine's calculations were finished. The flight path to return home would take the ship around the far side of the moon. From there, the moon's gravity would act like a slingshot to zing the ship back to Earth. To get home, the crew of Apollo 13 would have to follow Catherine's course exactly by burning off fuel at precise intervals. If the astronauts made a mistake, their ship would drift through space forever. Catherine waited anxiously to hear the astronauts' report. Finally, it crackled over the loudspeakers. "We've got it!" Apollo 13 was back on track. Katherine Johnson had done it. She brought Apollo 13 home. She was no longer the kid who dreamed of what lay beyond the stars. She was now a star herself. And that was Counting on Katherine, How Katherine Johnson Saved Apollo 13. Enjoy the rest of your time enjoying this program.
My name is Representative Jamila Taylor, and I'm excited to read Rosa by Nikki Giovanni. Mrs. Parks was having a good day. Mother was getting over that touch of flu and was up this morning for breakfast at the table. Her husband, Raymond Parks, was one of the best barbers in the county, had been asked to take on extra work at the Air Force Base. And the first day of December was always special because you could just feel Christmas in the air. Everybody knew the alterations department would soon be very, very busy. Mrs. Parks would laugh each year with the other seamstresses and say, "Those elves in the North Pole have nothing on us." The women of Montgomery, both young and older, would come in with their fancy holiday dresses that needed adjustments or their Sunday suits and blouses that needed just a touch, a flower or some velvet trimming or something to make the ladies feel and look festive. Rosa Parks was the best seamstress. The needle and thread flew through her hands like gold spinning from Rumpelstiltskin's loom. The other seamstresses would tease Rosa Parks and say she used magic. Rosa would laugh, "Not magic, just concentration," she would say. Some days she would skip lunch to be finished on time. This Thursday had gotten a bit ahead of their schedule. "Why don't you go on home, Rosa?" said the supervisor. "I know your mother is feeling poorly and you might want to look in on her." The supervisor knew Rosa would stay until the work was done, but it was only December 1st. No need to push. Rosa appreciated that. Now she could get home early, and since Raymond would be working late, maybe she would surprise him with a meatloaf, his favorite. "See you in the morning," Rosa waved goodbye and headed for the bus stop. She fiddled in her pocket for the dime so that she would not have to ask for change. When she stepped up to drop off her fare in, she was smiling in anticipation of the nice dinner she would make. As was the evil custom, then she got off the bus and went to the back door to enter the bus from the rear. Rosa saw that the section reserved for blacks was full, but she noticed the neutral section, the part of the bus where blacks or whites could sit, had free seats. The left side of the aisle had 2 seats, and on the right side, a man was sitting next to the window. Rosa decided to sit next to him. She did not remember his name, but she knew his face. His son, Jimmy, came frequently to the NAACP Youth Council affairs. They exchanged pleasantries as the bus pulled away from the curb. Rosa settled her sewing bag and her purse near her knees, trying not to crowd Jimmy's father. Men do take up a lot of space, she was thinking as she tried to squish her packages closer. The bus made several more steps, and the 2 seats opposite of her were filled by blacks. She sat on her side of the aisle, daydreaming about her good day and planning her special meal for her husband. "I said, give me those seats," the bus driver bellowed. Mrs. Parks looked up in surprise. The 2 men on the opposite side of the aisle were rising to move into the crowded black section. Jimmy's father muttered, more to himself than anyone else, "I don't feel like trouble today. I'm gonna move." Mrs. Parks stood to let him out, looked at James Blake, the bus driver, and then sat back down. "You better make it easy on yourself," Blake yelled. "Why do you pick on us?" Mrs. Parks asked with a quiet strength of hers. "I'm gonna call the police," Blake threatened. "Do what you must," Mrs. Parks quietly replied. She was not frightened. She was not going to give in to that which was wrong. Some of the white people were saying aloud, "She ought to be arrested. Take her off this bus." Some of the black people, recognizing the potential for ugliness, got off the bus. Others stayed on, saying among themselves, "That is the neutral section. She has a right to be there." Mrs. Parks sat. As Mrs. Parks sat waiting for the police to come, she thought of all the brave men and women, boys and girls who stood tall for civil rights. She recited in her mind the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision in which the United States Supreme Court ruled that separate is inherently unequal. She sighed as she realized she was tired. Not tired from work, but tired from putting white people first. Tired from stepping off the sidewalks to let white people pass. Tired of eating at separate lunch counters and learning at separate schools. She was tired of colored entrances, colored balconies, colored drinking fountains, and colored taxis. She was tired of getting somewhere first and being waited on last. Tired of separate, and definitely tired of not equal. She thought about her mother and her grandmother, and she knew they would want her to be strong. She had not sought this moment, but she was ready for it. When the policeman bent down to ask, "Auntie, are you going to move?" all the strength of the people through all those many years joined in with her. Rosa Parks said no. Joanne Robinson was at the Piggly Wiggly when she learned of the arrest. She had stopped in to purchase a box of macaroni and cheese. She always served macaroni and cheese when she baked red snapper for dinner. A sister member of the Women's Political Council approached her just as she reached the checkout line. "Not Mrs. Parks," Mrs. Robinson exclaimed. Then she looked furtively around, passed the word that everyone should meet me at my office at 10 o'clock tonight, she said. Mrs. Robinson was also Dr. Robinson, a professor at Alabama State, the college designated for colored people, and she was the newly elected president of the Women's Political Council. She rushed home to put dinner on the table, clean up the kitchen, and put the kids to bed. She kissed her husband goodbye and hurried to the college. It was dark when they finally gathered. The 25 women first held hands in prayers in hopes that they were doing the right thing. After all, they were going to use the stencil maker, the printer, and paper of Alabama State without permission. If they were caught at the college, they could all be arrested for trespassing. But they were working to undermine a vicious law. They decided they would stand against the umbrella of courage Rosa Parks had offered, keeping off the rains of fear and self-disgust. The women quickly formed groups to carry out each task. Making the stencils was the most difficult because the machine keys had to be struck very hard so that the letters would be clearly readable. If a mistake was made, the whole page had to be thrown out. It took a lot of concentration. The posters read, "No riders today. Support Mrs. Parks. Stay off the buses. Walk on Monday." The women made enough posters for every citizen of color in Montgomery. The next morning, as people read the posters, they remembered the joy they felt when the Supreme Court declared separate was not equal. They were sure that once the highest court in the land had spoken, they would not be treated so badly, but that was not the case. Soon after the ruling, Emmett Till, a 14-year-old boy in Money, Mississippi, was viciously lynched. At his funeral, more than 100,000 people mourned with his mother, and she left his casket open saying, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." Now, only weeks after these killers were freed, Rosa Parks had taken the courageous stand. The people were ready to stand with her. They came together in a great mass meeting, the Women's Political Caucus, the NAACP, and all the churches. They needed someone to speak for them, to give voice to the injustice. Everyone agreed that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would be ideal. We will stay off those buses, Dr. King intoned. We will walk until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And the people walked. They walked in the rain. They walked in the hot sun. They walked early in the morning. They walked late at night. They walked at Christmas. They walked at Easter. They walked on the 4th of July. They walked on Labor Day. They walked on Thanksgiving. And then it was almost Christmas again. They still walked. On November 13th, 1956, almost a year after the arrest of Rosa Parks, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that segregation on the buses, like segregation at schools, was illegal. Segregation was wrong. Rosa Parks said no, so that the Supreme Court could remind the nation that the Constitution of the United States makes no provision for second-class citizenship. We are all equal under the law, and all are entitled to its protection. The integrity, the dignity, the quiet strength of Rosa Parks turned her no into a yes for change. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and I hope you enjoyed reading Rosa with me.
Hello, my name is Isaiah Anderson Jr., and I will be reading a story today entitled Child of the Civil Rights Movement by Paula Young Sheldon and Raul Kalam. Going home. Mama was from Alabama. Daddy was from Louisiana, the Deep South. They had been called bad names, treated badly, told, "You can't do that," just because of the color of their skin. They grew up with Jim Crow, laws that said black people had to sit in the back of the bus, the last car of the train, the balcony of the movie theater, laws that said black people couldn't vote. I was born in New York, where there was no Jim Crow. But one day when Mom and Daddy were watching the news, they saw something called the Freedom Riders. Black and white students riding buses together from the north to the south to protest the bad laws. They watched as racists pulled the students from their seats and set the buses on fire. "We have to go help," my father exclaimed. "We have to go home," my mother declared. So Mama and Daddy packed up their 3 little girls, Andrea, Lisa, and me, and we went back to Georgia, back to Jim Crow, where whites could, but blacks could not, back to the heart of the civil rights movement. My first protest. In our new home in Atlanta, Jim Crow was everywhere. At first, I thought Jim Crow was a big black crow that squawked whenever a black person tried to get a good seat. Carl, you can't sit there. But really, he was a white man who lived long ago. He painted his face black and made fun of African Americans. He didn't sound very nice to me. I guess that's why they named the laws after him, because they weren't very nice either. Despite Jim Crow, a few restaurants had opened where blacks and whites could eat together. One Sunday, Mama and Daddy decided to see just how far things had really come. So after church, we went to have brunch at the brand new Holiday Inn restaurant. We stepped into the fancy lobby with chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and we asked for a table, but they wouldn't let us in. We looked at all the empty tables with white tablecloths and a few white faces that stared at us in horror. All we wanted was to sit down and eat. I was so hungry that I started crying, but they wouldn't let us in. "My baby's hungry," Mama said, while I kept crying louder and louder. Mom and Daddy didn't try to stop me. They simply sat me down and let me cry. And did I ever? I screamed at the top of my lungs. My very first protest, my own little sit-in. But they still wouldn't let us in. Uncle Martin. Uncle Martin had a big, broad smile and eyes that twinkled. "Come here, girl," he said, whenever our families would meet at one of the only pools for African Americans in Atlanta, the Ollie Street YMCA. Are you ready to get in that water and teach me how to swim? Run! I would run as fast as my skinny legs could carry me. Run and leap. Leap into his wide open arms and fly. Fly as he threw me high into the air. No! I would scream and laugh. My arms clasped around his neck as he pretended to throw me in. But Uncle Martin really wasn't my uncle, not by blood anyway. We were close because our fathers worked together. Close because our mothers worried together. Close because we all struggled together. Close because we were brought together for a common goal, a common good. We were one family, the family of the African American Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights family. Like all families, we'd have dinner together. And since there were so few restaurants that served African Americans, we'd often eat at friends' houses. We might walk around the corner to Uncle Ralph and Aunt Juanita's, or go to Uncle Martin and Aunt Coretta's, or everyone would come to our house. One night, when it was our turn to host, I sat under the kitchen table, watching and listening, watching the folks in the dining room, listening to the booming voices, angry sometimes very angry. They were talking about Selma, Alabama, where, as in most cities in the South, blacks had been denied the right to vote. They were organizing a huge march to protest from Selma to Montgomery. They had already marched twice before, and twice before they had been beaten back. With everyone trying to talk at once, I thought they sounded just like instruments tuning up before a concert. Blackwell, the professor, was like a trombone, so smooth, clearly presenting the facts. Jose Ambo around the table in his overalls, tooting like a tuba. I was in Selma last time, and we got to go back. Let's wait, Daddy said, the mellow saxophone of reason. I flinched when Big Orange stood up, his huge frame towering above everyone else. That ain't right, Andy, he boomed like a bass drum. We gotta go help these folks now. Uncle Ralph agreed, his voice rising melodically above the horn and drum like a violin. Then Aunt Dorothy's sweet soprano joined in. We've got to get the young people involved, she sang. If they can go to Vietnam to fight, they can fight at home. Mama's flute chimed in from the kitchen, reminding men that women would be the key to any march's success. Meanwhile, Uncle Martin sat silent and listened to the orchestra play. Uncle Martin loved the music of his friends and knew that each instrument needed to be heard. But he also knew that in the end, they must come together like a symphony, as one. Paula, baby, Mama said, set the table. I slipped out from my hiding place, grabbed the napkins and forks, and bounced into the dining room, my nightgown fluttering behind me. The discussion continued as passionately as before, but as I sat each plate, the person seated paused, looked at me and smiled, patted my head, or even gave me a gentle hug. Dinner's ready, Mama called, carrying in a large dish of macaroni and cheese. Let me help you, Jean, Aunt Dorothy volunteered, and went to get the bowl of green beans and a pitcher of sweet tea. In the kitchen, Andrea grabbed the baked chicken and marched in first, as always. Lisa came next, carrying a big, beautiful salad, and I got the basket of cornbread. Sometime later, when everyone was done, there were hugs and kisses, and I'm so full I can't walk, and raving about the macaroni and cheese, which seemed to come from a magic pot that filled up every time you scooped some of a creamy casserole into a plate. No matter how many people came to dinner, there was always enough to go around, enough to strengthen, enough to comfort the family of the Civil Rights Movement. Selma, Montgomery. Daddy was always away a lot. Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, while Mama stayed home to care for us. He was away marching, organizing, registering voters, protesting unfair laws, teaching nonviolence. Sometimes he was beaten. Sometimes he went to jail for breaking the Jim Crow laws that said blacks and whites couldn't eat together or go to school together or even drink from the same water fountain. Sometimes he went to jail just for marching. But when Daddy was getting ready to march to Montgomery, Mama said, "I'm marching too." So they packed up their 3 little girls and we headed to Selma. We gathered at Brown Chapel AME Church the next morning with thousands of others. I looked around and saw so many different kinds of people, black and white, young and old, rich and poor. There were Jewish rabbis, Catholic priests, and lots of Baptist ministers. There was even a man with one leg who everybody called Sunshine. There were people from the South and people from the North. One group had come all the way from Hawaii, and they handed out leis to the leaders. Excitement flashed through the air like lightning. Then Uncle Martin linked arms with the priest and extended his hand to Aunt Coretta as if to ask her to dance. And the march was on. Since I was only 4 years old, I could walk for just a little while. Mama carried me until she got tired, and then I got passed from aunt to uncle to aunt. Lisa was 8, still small enough to ride on Daddy's shoulders as he jogged up and down the long line of marchers, shouting at us to pick up the pace or starting a song to keep our spirits high. He ran up and down that long line so many times, he said he marched from Selma to Montgomery 10 times that week. Andrea was 10 years old, and she marched proudly that day. "Do you want to ride?" Mama asked, offering to put her in one of the cars that followed behind for old folks and young folks and just plain tired folks. "No, I want to march," she said firmly. That night, I fell asleep in Mama's arms. When I woke up, I was at my grandparents' house, not far from Selma. Andrea, Lisa, and I spent the rest of the week there while Mama and Daddy continued on. It would take 4 days to march the 50 miles from Selma to Montgomery, the National Guard escorting the peaceful protesters the whole way to keep them safe. All over the country, people watched on TV as the group marched triumphantly into Montgomery. President Johnson saw it too. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. Then one joyous evening, the 6th of August, 1965, my family sat around our small black and white television set. Uncle Martin stood over the shoulder of President Johnson and watched him sign the bill that would make sure all people, black and white, could vote and no one could stop them. Curled up in Mama's lap, I thought about our march while pictures flashed across the screen. Andrea and Lisa shouted at the TV, pointing out folks we knew and the places we'd been. We've talked about the singing, the praying, the friends and family, even the tired feet. It made me glow with pride to know that I had played one small part. But even then, I also knew that we'd won just one battle, and there were many more to come. And one day, when Mama and Daddy were too tired to march, too weary to carry us on their shoulders, too exhausted to fight another battle, the baton would pass to us, and we would march on, children of the Civil Rights Movement. Thank you for joining us. My name is Isaiah Anderson Jr., and I've just read to you Child of the Civil Rights Movement.
My name is Damian Patnott, and I'm the proud superintendent of the Brenton School District. And today, I'm here to read a story, I Have a Dream, by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I say to you today, my friends, that even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day,
little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain from Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. That was I Have a Dream by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's event.
Hi, I'm Jason, and today I'm going to be reading I Am Martin Luther King Jr. It's a book by Brad Meltzer. When I was little, I used to get into a lot of accidents. One day, my little brother hit me in the head with a baseball bat. 2 other times, I mistakenly got knocked over by a car. Another day, I tumbled over our banister, then bounced through an open door into the basement. Even before I could read, I knew I liked books. My dad always talked about how I kept a lot of books around me. I used to tell my parents, when I grow up, I'm going to get me some big words. There is a power in words. Big words were in my future. When I was 6 years old, one of my best friends was a boy whose father owned a store across the street. Tag, you're it. No, you're it. No, you're it. My friend was white. I was black. It didn't matter to us. We would play games and have fun together. But when we started going to school, everything changed. He went to a school where all the kids were white. I went to a school where everyone was black. Soon after that, he told me, I can't play with you anymore. Why? My dad said so. He doesn't want us being friends. But why? You're one of my best friends, aren't you? Aren't you? I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. At dinner, my parents explained, "It's because you're black and he's white." I was so mad that day. How could someone treat me differently just because of the color of my skin? I wanted to hate my friend and his father. But my parents told me to do the opposite, that I should love my friend even though he hurt me. They taught me that it's better to have more love in your life than more hate. Then my mother taught me one of the most important lessons of all. You are as good as anyone. You must never feel that you are less than anyone else. I wanted to believe it, but every day I saw the opposite. I saw that you could be treated unfairly just because of the color of your skin. If you were white, you went to a good school with great playgrounds and plenty of books. If you were black, your school was small, sometimes with no desks or even windows. It wasn't just the schools. Black people had to use different water fountains, different elevators, even different bathrooms. In fact, on a hot day when everyone wanted ice cream, if you were white, you could sit at the counter and eat from a nice dish. But since I was black, if they served me at all, it was through a side window and they'd put my ice cream in a flimsy paper cup. It got even worse when I was 14. I had just won a speech competition. My speech was about being fair to all people. I was so excited. Then, on the bus ride home, a few white people got on board. "You need to give up your seats to the whites." At first, I stayed put. It didn't seem fair, but my teacher convinced me to move. We spent the rest of the ride standing and getting tossed in every direction. It was the angriest I have ever been. Every day, this is what life was like. Black people were treated terribly. The only question was, what could I do about it? At age 15, I started college. By 19, I became a minister and entered seminary school to study religion. Over those years, I read the works of Henry David Thoreau and Mahatma Gandhi. Thoreau taught me about civil disobedience, how an evil system could be changed without violence. Gandhi opened my mind to the power of nonviolent resistance. What's that? Love. It's using love and peaceful methods to change unfair things in society. It was a lesson I wanted to share with everyone. In no time at all, I got my chance. In Alabama, a black woman named Rosa Parks was told to give up her bus seat to a white man. It was just like what happened to me. But unlike me, Mrs. Parks refused. She was arrested. Early the next morning, I got a phone call from a local community leader. "It's time to take a stand. We should boycott the buses so everyone knows that we won't accept this treatment anymore." You know, that's not going to be easy. Do not ask if it's easy. Ask if it's right. It was just like Thoreau taught. Instead of using violence to protest the unfair rules, black people would use a peaceful method. We would not ride the public buses. Without our money, the bus companies would go out of business. Now the only question was, would it work? On the first day of the protest, my wife called me to the window. "The buses are all empty. It's working." We had to keep it going. As the head of the bus boycott, I gave one of the most important speeches of my life. The room was packed. Camera crews were filming. I had only 20 minutes to prepare. I didn't use notes. But by speaking from my heart, I found out how big words can be. We are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. When the history books are written in the future, somebody will have to say, there lived a race of people, a black people, who had the moral courage to stand up for their rights. The police put me in jail, saying I was breaking the law. Other folks bombed my house, but instead of using my fists, I kept calm. Don't you want to fight back? I am a man of nonviolence, and I know that I do not stand alone. We are with you all the way, Reverend. If no one rides these buses, we'll go out of business. You're finally getting that, huh? For more than a full year, every black person in the city, and some white people too, refused to ride the buses. That meant some people had to walk for miles, but they kept going. There was power in standing together. Eventually, our peaceful protest worked. The rules were changed. Public buses could no longer separate people based on the color of their skin. This was only the beginning. Soon, our peaceful protest sparked other peaceful protests. At lunch counters, college students organized sit-ins where they would not stop until everyone could eat together. Our methods of nonviolence were so powerful, I was invited to meet with the president at the White House. But sometimes the hardest problems were right at home. Daddy, look, an amusement park. Please, can we go? I'm sorry, Yoki, we can't. Funtown is not open to black people. Seeing my daughter cry was one of the most painful moments of my life. It only made me work harder for change. Was it easy? Absolutely not. During one protest in Birmingham, Alabama, the police again arrested me and locked me in a dark jail cell that only had one window. Someone slipped me a newspaper in which white religious leaders had written an article calling us lawbreakers. Someone then snuck me a pen. In that jail cell, I wrote my own personal response in the margins of the newspaper and even on toilet paper. My letter from the Birmingham jail was soon published as a pamphlet. Then it was in magazines and newspapers. Today, it has been read by millions of people. Like I said, it is amazing how big words can be. Our message was so important, even kids your age joined us. In Birmingham, during the Children's Crusade, more than 1,000 kids, some as young as 6 years old, showed up to march. What do you want? Freedom. The first day, the police arrested 900 of them. The next day, 2,500 children showed up, ready to go to jail. This was our finest hour. Enraged that we were not giving up, the chief of police told the firemen to spray the children with water hoses and attack them with dogs. They thought it would stop us, but instead the whole country watched on TV, and they watched what they were doing to our children. It was a wake-up call for the nation's conscience. How can they treat little kids like that? That's not right. We need to help them. 90 days later, the rules began to change. Now blacks and whites in Birmingham were using the same lunch counters, water fountains, and restrooms. You could feel it in the air. More changes was coming. Freedom was contagious. By the summer of 1963, an estimated 1 million Americans held their own protests in cities across the country. A man named A. Philip Randolph suggested a massive march. If we march together peacefully, they won't be able to ignore us. Together, we can convince Congress and the president to pass laws so that no one in America can treat people differently based on skin color. I like that idea. Where should we have it? There's only one place. People came from almost every state. They came in nearly every form of transportation. They even took off work and did not get paid just to be there. Old people, young people, black people, white people, even children like you. They all came to Washington, D.C., gathering in a righteous army. Why? Because they wanted a change, and they knew the surest way to change the world is to stand together. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. On August 28, 1963, I stood at the podium and spoke what some later called my biggest words of all. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Let freedom ring from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. After the March on Washington, the President and Congress passed new laws for civil rights. But that didn't mean our work was done. Indeed, our greatest battle was still to come. It began with 600 activists as they tried to walk 54 miles from Selma, Alabama, to the state capital of Montgomery. Back then, there were rules that stopped black people from voting. If you want to change the laws, you have to be able to vote for new people to make the laws. We're marching to tell the governor we want voting rights. This brutality must end. No matter what, don't let them pass. The police had billy clubs and tear gas. They attacked our group and knocked many people down. But as I learned so long ago, you have to get back up. No matter how hard they hit us, we remained peaceful. Still, we didn't get through. 2 days later, we tried again. Now there were 2,500 of us. We will get to Montgomery. No, you won't. I promise you won't. Once again, we tried. Once again, we did not get through. Did we give up? What do you think? It was Sunday, March 21st, 1965, our third try. Now we had 8,000 people with us. We are on the move. We shall overcome. Check out that crowd. Black, white, Christian, Jewish, all standing together. For 2 days we marched. Rain could not stop us. The world was watching. The White House was too. President Johnson even sent troops to protect us. Exhaustion could not stop us. As we reached Montgomery, Alabama, tears were shed. But this time, there were tears of joy. In my life, people tried to tell me I wasn't as good as they were just because of the color of my skin. When someone hurts you like that, it can be tempting to hurt them back. You must refuse. When someone shows you hate, show them love. When someone shows you violence, show them kindness. To reach our goals, we must walk the path of peace. We must lock arms with our brothers and sisters. We must march together. When we do, our voices will be heard and freedom will ring. Remember Funtown Amusement Park? Its doors eventually opened to black people, and Dr. King got to take his daughter. Did you know that he was the youngest person to win a Nobel Peace Prize at that time? Just 35 years old. He donated the prize money to the civil rights movement. And he said the prize was the work of many other unsung heroes. He fought against poverty too. There's even a national holiday for him, the third Monday of every January. Only Washington and Lincoln get a day like that, and they share theirs. It's a day to remember how far we've come and how much more work there is to do. I am Martin Luther King Jr. I stand for peace. I stand for justice. I stand to help others. I stand as proof that no matter how hard the struggle, we must fight for what is right and work to change what is wrong. Whatever struggle you face, no matter how hard it gets, you must always move forward. I am proof of this. If we rise up, we will stand together. If we remain united, nothing can stop our dream. I am Martin Luther King Jr. I hope you enjoyed this story today.